for joining me on Global News. On the news, South Korea, US to hold military exercise in spite North Korea threats. More than half of the world on track to be overweight by 2035. Nicaragua's government committed crimes against humanity, United Nations experts say. Rohingya refugees criticize United Nations for devastating cuts to food aid. And Cambodia opposition leader jailed 27 guests for treason. Reactions trill. Stay with me for these and more stories. South Korea and the United States will press ahead with large-scale military drills later this month, despite North Korea threatening to take unprecedentedly strong actions against such exercises. The South Korean and U.S. militaries will conduct similar military exercises from March 13th to 23rd to strengthen their combined defensive capabilities, to two militaries said in a statement on Friday. The exercise marked the longest edition of the exercises dubbed Freedom Shield, which according to South Korea's reports will involve a joint computer simulation command post exercise that runs concurrently with a field training exercise called Warrior Shield. Previously, joint military drills have drawn sharp reactions from North Korea, including missile launches and nuclear threats, and it's likely that Pyongyang will respond to Freedom Shield with provocative missile tests and belligerent rhetoric. North Korea is opposed to such drills, which she says are rehearsals for invasion by the U.S. and its allies in Seoul. On Friday, the two militaries also conducted a combined air drill with at least one American B-1B long-range bomber and South Korean F-15K and KF-16 fighter aircraft, South Korea's Ministry of Defense said in a statement. The aim of the drill was to practice coordination as well as demonstrate Washington's extended deterrence against North Korea threat, the ministry added. Such exercises have in the past drawn sharp reactions from North Korea, including missile tests and nuclear threats. During the forthcoming exercises, the allies will conduct a number of large-scale joint field training drills during Warrior Shield that are designed to improve operation execution capabilities, said Colonel Isaac last month. North Korea's foreign ministry warned the U.S. and South Korea that they will face unprecedentedly persistent and strong counteractions if they carry out their planned military drills this year. North Korea has previously issued similar rhetoric in terms of animosity with the U.S. and South Korea, but tensions have been rising over recent months following Pyongyang test launching dozens of ballistic missiles last Continental Ballistic Missiles ICBMs. The drills also come as North Korea appears to be dealing with food shortages. In January, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and the U.S. said the U.S. will also increase its deployment of advanced weapons such as fighter jets and bombers to the Korean peninsula amid the growing tension with North Korea. More than half of the world's population will be overweight or obese by 2035 without significant action, according to a report. The World Obesity Federation 2023 at last predicts that 51% of the world, or more than 4 billion people, will be obese or overweight within the next 12 years. Of those, nearly 2 million, or 1 in 4 people, will have obesity. Rates of obesity are rising particularly quickly among children and in lower-income countries, the reports found. Describing the data as a clear warning, Louise Boer, president of the World Obesity Foundation, said policymakers needed to act now to prevent the situation from worsening. It is particularly worrying to see obesity rates rising fastest among children and adolescents, she said in a statement on Thursday. Governments and policymakers around the world need to do all they can to avoid passing health, social and economic costs onto the younger generation. The report found that childhood obesity could more than double from 2020 levels to 208 million boys and 175 million girls by 2035. The cost to society is significant as a result of the health conditions linked to being overweight. The Federation said more than $4 trillion annually by 2035, or 3% of global gross domestic product (GDP). However, the authors said they were not blaming individuals but calling for a focus on the societal, environmental and biological factors involved in the conditions. The report uses Body Mass Index (BIM) for its assessment, a number calculated by dividing a person's weight in kilograms by their height in meters squared. In line with the World Health Organization's guidelines, the a BMI score of more than 25 is overweight and more than 30 is obese. In 2020, 2.6 billion people fell into these categories of 38% rather of the world's population. The report also found that almost all of the countries expected to see the greatest increases in obesity in the coming years are low or middle income countries in Asia and Africa. The data will be presented to United Nations policymakers and member states next week. Now, Nicaragua's government has committed serious and systematic violations which amount to crimes against humanity. An United Nations appointed team of human rights experts has said, calling for international sanctions against the government. The three-person body said on Thursday that the government has committed and continued to commit acts of torture, extrajudicial executions and arbitrary detention since 2018. It names President Daniel Ortega and Vice President Rosario Murillo, who is his wife, as participants in the violations and called for international legal action and sanctions against those involved. The objective of the government is to eliminate by different means any opposition or dissenting voices in the country. Jan Simon, chair of the group of human rights experts on Nicaragua, said according to reports in Geneva, Switzerland, saying the government was weaponizing the functions of the state against the population. This has resulted in the Nicaraguan population living in fear, he added. The report also condemned Ortega's government for stripping 222 opponents of their nationality after they were loaded on board a plane and flown to the United States last month. Nicaragua's diplomatic mission in Geneva did not reply to a request for comment on the report's findings. The group of experts said it sent 12 letters to the government since it began working a year ago, as well as the final reports, but never received a response. Ortega, now aged 77, first came to power as a leader of the left-wing Sandinista movement that toppled the Somoza dictatorship in 1970s revolution. He was in and out of office over the years but took power again in 2007 and has ruled since then. Human rights groups and the political opposition have long accused his government of severely repressing civic freedoms and his opponents to win elections and keep his grip on the country. Security forces killed more than 300 people in anti-government protests in 2018. Asked about the scale of the abuses, the experts said they had documented more than 100 cases of executions, hundreds of cases of torture and arbitrary detention, and thousands of cases of political persecution. Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh say they are struggling to survive after the United Nations slashed their food aid due to a massive funding gap. After a $125 million donation shortfall, monthly food vouchers were cut from $12 to $10 per person starting in March. The United Nations World Food Programme (WFP) announced, warning further cuts were imminent without an immediate cash injection. The drop has already caused hardship among the roughly 1 million Rohingya refugees living in Bangladesh's overcrowded camps, where they are reliant on aid, and malnutrition is already rampant. We don't have any income and the rations are reduced, said refugee Rahila Begum, 40, whose son is ill and malnourished. He does not eat rice or other foods but only nutritious nut cream. They have stopped giving the nut cream and I don't know how he will survive. This is the first time assistance have been scaled back since an estimated 750,000 Rohingya fled over the border during a 2017 crackdown by Myanmar's military that is now subject to a United Nations genocide investigation. Bangladesh has struggled to support its immense refugee population since, with the prospect of a wholesale return to Myanmar vanishingly remote. Tom Andrews, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Myanmar, said he spoke with families in the camps who have already had to cut back on food staples. Reversing this cuts in food aid is literally a matter of life and death for Rohingya families, he said, adding that the situation was a stain on the conscience of the international community. Andrews, who is mandated by the UN but is not an official for the body, said malnutrition, anemia and stunted growth were already rife in the camps. The UN expert made his plea in a letter to the UN member states on what could be a series of cuts in food rations for the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. The cuts could exceed 30% of the current allocation. Andrews said many UN members have offered rhetorical support to the Rohingya political rhetoric. It is past the time for UN member states to replace empty declarations of support with life-saving action, he added. Unless they are quickly resolved, the impact of this calls will be catastrophic and long-lasting. On Wednesday, 12 Rohingya civilian groups representing the mostly Muslim minority community said the UN Food Aid Court will be devastating. They said the courts will worsen an already dire economic and humanitarian situation in the squalid camps and will have severe implications, including child labor, human trafficking, child marriage, illegal activities, prostitution, and a hostile environment. Privately, United Nations and foreign diplomats have urged the government to allow Rohingya to work outside the camps, especially in Cox's Bazar's booming tourism sector, farming, and industry. And lastly, on global news, Cambodian opposition leader Kem Sokha has been sentenced to 27 years under house arrest after being found guilty of treason. Kem Sokha, who headed the now-banned Cambodian National Rescue Party, was arrested in a midnight raid in 2017 and accused of conspiring with foreign powers to overthrow the government of longtime leader Hun Sen. Kem Sokha denied the charges, while the United States and rights groups said the trial, which began 3 years after his arrest, was politically motivated. Here are some reactions of the verdict. Sam Rainsy, opposition leader in exile, ally of Kem Sokha in the CNRP. It is terrible for him, but what can I say is that Hun Sen believes that he can face Western sanctions because he has the unconditional support from China. These accusations against Kem Sokha are groundless. Accusing him of wanting to topple the government with the U.S. support is totally ridiculous. I would like to see all democratic countries condemn this condemnation of Kem Sokha and to warn Hun Sen that the next election in Cambodia will not be considered legitimate if the charge against Kem is not dropped and if the opposition is not allowed to take part in the elections. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, it will be Zoom on Nigeria. Stay with You're welcome back. It's Zoom on Nigeria with a lot happening in the country. Federal government summons Burkina Faso diplomat over alleged killing of Nigeria pilgrims. The federal government has summoned the Burkina Faso envoy to Nigeria, Pascal Goba, over the brutal murder of 16 Nigerians who were on a pilgrimage to Kaolack, Senegal, over a month ago. Ambassador Zubairu Dada, the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, made this known on Thursday in a statement signed by the Special Advisor on Media, HMOS Ibrahim Aliyu. Recall that the Jimayatu Ansaruddin and Atijaniya of Nigeria said 16 of its members were shot dead allegedly by the Burkinabe soldiers on patrol. They were reportedly on their way to the home country of their leader in Senegal when they met their untimely death. The other stated that the Burkina Faso envoy was called to explain in detail what really happened when the 16 Nigerians were gruesomely killed allegedly by some members of the Burkinabe military. He said Nigerians were agitated by the incident and were calling for a faster and comprehensive response from the government of Burkina Faso. The minister also stated his dismay over what he described as unnecessary delay to find out the truth about the ugly incident. Goba, who first commiserated with the families of the victims as well as the government and the Nigerian people over what he described as unfortunate incident, that they understood the pain that the families of the deceased were going through. He said investigation had already commenced to fish out the actual perpetrators of the killing by the Burkinabe government and that his country was ready to work with a team of experts from Nigeria to unravel what really happened. Goba, while reiterating his country's total commitment to the investigation, said preliminary results had shown that terrorists harboring the area were responsible for the killings, as the area was a no-go area for both the military and civilian population due to the activities of insurgents. On Naira redesign, anxiety as Supreme Court continues hearing today. Nigerians are eagerly waiting for the Supreme Court's decision on the Central Bank of Nigeria CBN latest Naira policy. A 9-member panel of the Supreme Court led by Justice John Okoro scheduled judgments for March 3rd in their most recent hearing. Kaduna, Kogi, Zamfara, Katsina, Lagos, Cross River, Ogun, Ekiti, Ondo, Sokoto, Rivers, Kano, Niger, Jigawa, Nasarawa, Plateau, and Abia states are the plaintiffs in the cases. On February 15th, the Apex Court, in response to an application by the Bayelsa and Edo states, joined the two states as co-defendants with the original sole defendant, the Attorney General of the Federation, AGF. The lawyer for Kaduna and Kogi State, Abdul Hakim Mustafa San, urged the court in his final submission to grant all of the relief sought in his client's suit and dismiss the notices of objection filed by the AGF and Bayelsa State. Abiodun Owonikoko San, the lawyer for Zamfara State, who adopted Mustafa's argument, said his client also filed an application on February 17th asking the court to set aside Mr. President Buhari directive on February 16th, directing that only 200 Naira notes be used in spite of the court's pending order. Owonikoko went on to say that the federal government's Naira redesign policy violates Section 17, subsection 2, subsection C of the Constitution, which states that government actions must be. Hero Onibanjo San, who represented the state, stated this in his office, filed numerous documents in the case. He said one of this document is a motion seeking an order barring the defendant stroke respondent, the AGF, from being granted an audience before this court until the defendant or his principal, the President of Nigeria, obeys the orders issued by this court on February 8th, directing that the all notes remain legal tender until the suit is resolved. On elections, INEC to conduct supplementary NAS election in areas declared inconclusive. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has said supplementary election will hold in places where results had not been declared for last Saturday's National Assembly election. The Commission said it will announce the date for the supplementary poll after conducting the governorship and Houses of Assembly elections on March 11th. The National Assembly election conducted in Sokoto State was declared inconclusive after a collation. The Commission also announced that the rescheduled National Assembly election in Edo and Enugu states will be held alongside the governorship and Houses of Assembly elections. INEC National Commissioner for Information and Voter Education, Mr. Festus Okoye, in a statement after its weekly meeting, said the Commission was putting finishing touches to preparation for the state elections. The statement reads, and I quote, the Commission held its regular weekly meeting today, Thursday, March 2nd, 2023, and deliberated on several issues including the presidential and National Assembly elections, the governorship and state assembly elections, and the pending elections in Enugu East Senatorial District and the Eastern Central / Eastern West and Igboen Federal Constituency in Edo State. The Commission assures Nigerians that the governorship and state houses of assembly elections scheduled for Saturday, March 11, 2023 will hold as scheduled, and all the processes and procedures leading to the election are being finalized. Furthermore, the Commission will conduct the rescheduled elections in Enugu and Edo States on Saturday, March 11, 2023, along with the governorship and state Icon Awards organizers leader to concede power to an opposition governor, Dr. Joel Howard Taylor, former president of Botswana, Lieutenant General Seretse Sikama Ainkama retired, and many other the Rwanda capital on April 1st. Heritage Times, the African Heritage Concert and Awards will celebrate and honor distinguished African personalities who have dignified themselves through remarkable achievements across the globe, according to the organizers. Their actions and activities, the organizers said, have made it imperative to foster the African culture of excellence and promote Afrocentrism. They said the awards will be a celebration and war recognition of outstanding achievements recorded by Africans, including those residing in the diaspora in the areas of business. Lawan urges INEC to conduct March 11th election in accordance with Constitution and Electoral Act. Ahead of the governorship and House of Assembly elections planned for March 11, 2023, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has been urged to abide by the Constitution and the Electoral Act 2022 in the conduct of the elections. Ahmed Lawan, the president of the Senate, who made the call at the close of Thursday's plenary, said he thinks INEC should consider looking into issues raised by the public during the just concluded presidential and National Assembly elections. The Senate suspended the plenary to March 14th to allow senators to participate in the campaigns and elections. Lawan pointed out that looking at the issues raised by the public will aid in the smooth conduct of the governorship and state houses of assembly elections. According to him, 7 serving senators are contesting in the governorship election, and listed their names to include Deputy Senate President Ovi Omo Agege running for the governorship of Delta under the All Progressives Congress APC. Others are Senator Aishatu Binani, APC Adamawa, Senator Haliru Jika, NNPP Bauchi, Senator Sandy Ono, PDP Cross River, Senator Ubasani, APC Kaduna, Senator Emmanuel Bwacha, APC Taraba, and Senator Teslim Folarin, APC in Oyo. And finally, as the world marks World Hearing Day, 1.5 billion people suffer hearing loss globally, according to the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization, to mark World Hearing Day, is calling for action to stem the epidemic of hearing loss, which presently affects 1.5 billion people globally. A roadmap for action is contained in WHO's First World Report on Hearing, who officials warn closely 2.5 billion people will be living with some degree of hearing loss by 2050 if nothing is done to prevent or mitigate this condition. Nearly a third, they say, will need hearing rehabilitation. The personnel and economic cost of this condition is huge. Many people who are deaf or suffer from varying degrees of hearing loss are stigmatized and spend much of their lives in isolation. Additionally, WHO reports unaddressed hearing loss cost the global economy nearly $1 trillion each year. The organization's technical officer on ear and hearing care, Shirley Chadha, says much of this hearing loss can be avoided. Many of the causes, for example, hearing loss, which is caused by listening to loud music over one's headphones and earphones, this can be prevented, as can be hearing loss, which is caused by loud noise in one's workplace. Other common causes of hearing loss: ear infections, rubella, meningitis. These are causes which can be prevented by established public health strategies. Chadha notes almost 60% of hearing loss in children is due to avoidable causes, such as ear infections and birth complications. She says solutions are available. She says hearing technologies such as hearing aids and cochlear implants, accompanied by rehabilitative therapy, can mitigate the adverse effects of hearing loss. Millions of people across the world are already benefiting from these interventions, but they are a bit of an exclusive group, because what we estimate is that across the world, only about 17% of people who need these services actually are able to benefit from them. She said people in low-income countries are the most undeserved because they'll be closed by integrating ear and hearing care into national primary health care services. WHO calls this a great investment, noting for every dollar invested in hearing loss care, governments can expect a return of nearly $16. To refresh our memory, South Korea, US to hold military exercise in spite North Korea threats. More than half of the world on track to be overweight by 2035. Nicaragua's government committed crimes against humanity, United Nations experts. Rohingya refugees criticize UN for devastating cuts to food aid, and Cambodia opposition leader jailed 27 years for treason. Reactions trill. Thanks for watching. I am Lois Reiki.